Hello, world. I go by the name of Joffey Joe, and this is my show. Call it how I see it. And after a brief hiatus due to COVID, your boy is back. And on this episode, there's a couple of things I want to talk to y'all about. First thing being first is the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So for almost about the past 2 months, I've been saying that the Eagles are a sorry ass team. Now, this sorry ass team has been put to rest, at least for this year. How they turn out next year, we'll all be watching and we'll all be witnessing what happens. So, up until week 12, the Philadelphia Eagles were on top of the NFL. They were 10-1. They were neck and neck with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had big aspirations to return to the Super Bowl. Then they matched up with the 49ers in a Mortal Kombat battle, which resulted in the Eagles suffering a fatality where their heart, their soul, and their whole mental state was ripped right out of them by the 49ers. After that, they did not recover. They fell flat on their face again and again and again and again and again. It just sucks as a fan because I put so much attention and energy and passion and even love into this team. Now, I kind of feel like a sucker because once again, another Philadelphia team has broken my heart, but not even broken my heart because the way that this ended, we just saw it happening this way anyway. But like I said, up until week 12, the Eagles had a lot of aspirations. And after playing the 49ers, I've never seen a team's championship window close so fast. It shut right on their fingers, and they were never able to recover from it. Now, to look at where we are now and sorting through all this rubble, who is to blame, right? Someone's got to be the scapegoat here. Who do we point the finger at here? Is it Nick Sirianni? Is it Matt Patricia? Is it Brian Johnson? Is it Jalen Hurts? No. I am going to go on a limb and follow what Donovan McNabb said earlier today. I believe who we as fans should be blaming is Howie Roseman. Yes. Howie Roseman is the general manager and executive vice president of the Philadelphia Eagles. He has been there since 2008. He's seen, I believe, 3 coaches during his tenure in and out. He has won a Super Bowl in his tenure, and he's had a lot of playoff success in his tenure, right? However, over time, there has been a power struggle, and now in 2024, we are at the place where Howie Roseman has a lot of power and a lot of say over this team in terms of personnel, in terms of numbers, in terms of contracts, and everything else. He is Jeffrey Lurie's right hand man. He handles all the business, right? For better and for worse. So, I want to shed light for at least this year the worst. The worst of what Howie Roseman has done to our team and how he has orchestrated and put all these ingredients to formulate this team, Okay. So, that first issue that we've had since the beginning of the year, and we all felt as fans would be an issue, is the linebacking core. We let TJ Edwards walk. TJ Edwards was an undrafted free agent and became a great player for our organization over the last 3 years. However, they let him walk, let him go to Chicago, where he recorded over 150 tackles and looked like a solid, great player for that organization. Another player that we previously let walk, who, according to Pro Football Focus, was the fourth best linebacker in the entire NFL, was Alex Singleton, another undrafted free agent that they scouted, used, and let walk. Okay? So, now the Eagles, after letting TJ Edwards walk, they felt that picking up a player like Nicholas Morrow, who was familiar with Sean Desai's defensive schemes and defensive tendencies, would be a good answer, at least as depth help. And they felt Nakobe Dean and, a veteran pickup along the way, such as Zach Cunningham, would be able to fill this void. They were wrong. Nakobe Dean's injury history came back to light, only played 4 games, and he went bye-bye. That put Nicholas Morrow into the role of being the Mike linebacker and controlling everything, and that was a failure. He failed at coverage. He failed in the run game. He failed in a lot of areas. And personally, I don't think Nicholas Morrow is worthy of being an NFL linebacker. That's just my opinion. Zach Cunningham proved to be serviceable for a while until he got hurt. And on that Monday night game, he missed 4 tackles. A little rusty. A late season acquisition of Shaquille Leonard. He used to go by the name of Darius Leonard. When he was Darius Leonard, he was an all-pro. But Shaquille Leonard, no. He is an all-no. I don't want him on our team. I wish he would have signed with the Cowboys. It would have sabotaged the Cowboys. But he chose us instead. And that proved to be a bad signing because his best days are way behind. And honestly, that's another player that should reconsider his NFL options. So that was one glaring need. I now bring up another glaring need, and it goes into the secondary. Okay, so bringing back Slay on a different deal, that proved to work out until the last part of the year where he needed knee surgery. But for the most part, he played okay. James Bradbury. Man. James Bradbury looked like Bradley Fletcher for this year. Last year, he was a good player in a different defensive scheme. And Jonathan Gannon's defensive scheme. And Sean Desai's defensive scheme. James Bradbury was in the bottom 10 of 150 cornerbacks in the NFL. In terms of coverage, in terms of tackling, in terms of all-around cornerback play. He was in the bottom 10. Awful. That's really all I need to say. I really don't need to say anything else about James Bradbury because he does not deserve to be on this team anymore. Now, we lost Avonte Maddox along the way, which we always do, but, Howie Roseman gave him money. We had Reed Blankenship, right? A good in-the-box tackler, but in terms of coverage, horrible. Horrible. Teams picked apart him, and it really showed. But I bring that up because we let C.J. Gardner-Johnson go, who had 6 interceptions last year and was a turnover machine. Very good player. Did get injured, but he is now on the Lions, and even though he was injured for most of the year, he is now on their playoff run. We let Marcus Epps go, who had a solid year with the Raiders in terms of play and everything else. And we replaced him with Terrell Edmonds, who we flipped into Kevin Byard, who did not fit this defensive scheme and looked lost. Our front front 4, our defensive line wasn't a strength at all. They after having a record season of sacks, they only had 40 this year, and them not getting home caused a lot of issues in our secondary where teams just picked us apart. But that was bound to happen. Quick release by the quarterback and everything else in terms of how we approach coverage, in terms of cushion, it really lacked. And Fletcher Cox was only a good run stuffer. Josh Sweat recorded his last sack week 9. Brandon Graham, no. And Jordan Davis, I didn't see any progression. Jalen Carter, he looked good for a little bit, and then he disappeared. So that's what happened to our defense. And other than going from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia, that did not work. It was a cry for help, and we kept crying. But that was the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, Jalen Hurts regressed. He looked just as bad as his first year as a quarterback with us. But this is also after a big contract of $250 million, which I go back to Howie Roseman, because Howie Roseman paid him. Howie Roseman also did something similar, which was a big red flag with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz had a magical season, got hurt, but no, they still paid him. They were quick to pay Carson Wentz, and after a Super Bowl run last year, they were quick to pay Jalen Hurts. Howie Roseman did that. John Lynch, 49ers GM. He is dangling Brock Purdy, and he will dangle Brock Purdy until he can't dangle him no more. They will not give him a contract until they absolutely have to, and if they don't have to, they'll just believe in Kyle Shanahan and his scheme, and they'll find another quarterback. That's why a lot of people are not high on Brock Purdy. Just saying. That's one example. Another example. Lamar Jackson just got his contract. He's been playing lights out for the Baltimore Ravens, putting his body on the line. And it took them until his 5th year to pay him. My final example. Actually, I have 2 more examples. Another example. Joe Burrow took the Bengals to the Super Bowl. But what happened? They did not pay him right away. It took until last offseason for them to pay him. And then I bring up Patrick Mahomes, okay? $500 million contract, right? And what was Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' issue this year? The receiving corps. So you have a pie, right, in terms of salary cap, and you have one guy having the big slice, and no one else can eat that slice or slices of that pie because one guy has a majority of the pie, okay? So back to the Eagles, since Howie Roseman was quick to pay Jalen Hurts, right? We were not able to keep TJ Edwards. We were not able to keep CJ Gardner-Johnson. We were not able to keep Marcus Epps. We were not able to keep other help that would have helped us out. We have big issues with the wide receiver help. We signed Julio Jones as a red zone threat and a 5-yard out. Zacchaeus, 10 catches. Our third receiver had 10 catches. Quez Watkins went bye-bye. I didn't do anything once again for another year. So, it goes back to Howie Roseman. A lot of people want to blame Nick Sirianni, but I believe Nick Sirianni is just a puppet for Howie Roseman, especially after how Howie Roseman kicked Doug Peterson to the curb, because Doug Peterson wanted to run the team the way he wanted to run it, but Howie Roseman didn't want it that way. Howie Roseman found a yes man in Nick Sirianni, and now we have an issue because Nick Sirianni can't really coach. He was riding the coattails of a Shane Steichen called offense and a Jonathan Gannon called defense. And now without them there, it showed they were exposed, and now the Eagles are where they are. Okay? So Nick Sirianni and his immature ways and his bodacious shirts and his comments towards Chiefs fans, or him gloating and taunting the Chiefs during the Super Bowl to Jalen Hurts, pointing at the scoreboard. I just don't find Nick Sirianni to be a good coach. However, I do believe he'll be back with new coordinators because he can't do the job himself, right? It will be interesting next year. I find this next year to be interesting because both Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman are on the last year of their deals. So, if things go even more sideways, I don't believe they'll be retained. I believe Jeffrey Lurie will finally be fed up. The miserable face we saw on Monday night will show again, and it will be even worse. To the point where house needs to be cleaned. Yes, I would like the house to be cleaned now, but it seems that we're going to have to deal with the mold and see if we can get rid of the mold for now. If the Eagles can bounce back and go on a little bit of a playoff run instead of being one and done, perhaps not all else will be failed. However, we shall see. I don't like Brian Johnson. I only believe he is getting head coaching opportunities because of this minority rule. I don't want to be that guy and say that, but it just seems that way. We need a whole new defensive mindset because the lack of tackling and the whole mindset and mentality of the defense has gone soft. Buddy Ryan would be rolling in his grave right now. Rolling. But we'll see. We'll see who we get to coach because Nick Sirianni isn't a coach. He's just a puppet. He's just a puppet that likes to be entertaining and loud and immature. Young coach, right? But these other young coaches, they're smart. This guy, he's not. But, like I said, we'll see how this year goes. They're both due for contract, and we'll see who really gets new contracts, okay? Until then, go Sixers and go Flyers. And I'm back. And my next topic that I am going to talk to you all about is NBA related, basketball related, but this expands to a larger horizon. Okay, so as we look at today's NBA, right? We got LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry, right? All in the later stages of their career. Hall of Fame players, players that we will always remember and recognize because of their style of play, right? But in today's NBA, it seems that the international players are in a bit of a takeover, right? So last night we saw Jokic and Embiid. On Tuesday night we saw them go at it and duel, and it was a great game. Um, as a Sixers fan, I love to see Joel actually show out and produce at high levels at this, especially against the best of the best. And right now, I would say that Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA. He is the Finals MVP. He is a two-time MVP and probably should have won last year, but give or take, they gave it to Joel Embiid, who is also an international player. Um, right now in today's NBA, I would say the top five players in the NBA right now are all international players. If you really look at it, if you're going to look at it like I just reiterated, I would say if I had a top five, I would say at number one, I would have Nikola Jokic. Number two, maybe Giannis Antetokounmpo at number two. Number three, I'd probably have Joel Embiid. At number four, I would probably have Luka Doncic. And at number five, I would have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander via Canada. So right there is your top five players in the NBA, and they're all international players. So this this comes to light via a lot of decades of basketball, right? This game has expanded throughout the whole globe. Even this past summer, the USA team, although they were not with, their A-list superstar players, the team that they constructed should have handled most of these other countries, but they did not. They did not win the FIBA World Cup. Other teams stepped up. Actually, Germany came out and won. They played Serbia, and Canada came in third place. Even Canada beat the USA team, and USA came in fourth place. And it shed light to how the game has evolved and changed, right? So a lot of player development overseas is and has shown over the past decade has shown to be superior to those American culture because many feel that American basketball is too show oriented, and a lot of it has generalized to more of perimeter shooting, while a lot of these Europeans and international players that come over to play in the NBA are more fundamentally based and more IQ and more team oriented basketball, which has prevailed, right? So if you were to look at how much of the NBA is international players, at least 100 international players have filed opening night rosters of each of the last 10 seasons. All 30 NBA teams have at least one foreign born player, and that current total tops the prior record of 121 that was seen in the years 2017 and the 2018 season, including also the 2021 season and 2022 season. Okay, so currently, right now, as of 2024 and the 2023 season, right now, currently, there are 125 international players in the NBA. Right now, that is a record, and this spans to over 40 countries and territories across 6 continents. And this is via of these opening night rosters of this season that is going on right now. This also includes a record number of players that come from Canada, which is at 26, and in second place comes a record number of players from France with 14. Okay, so the NBA has a record number of international players, and I believe this trend will continue. Scouts on NBA teams right now, they are going throughout the globe to find players everywhere, right? And it just shows how much this game has expanded. I know other leagues such as Major League Baseball, even the NFL has aspirations to have their games expand in such ways that the NBA expanded. The NBA really behind soccer is probably the second most. I apologize. In terms of expansion, the NBA is probably the second most expanded game in the world. Obviously, they have cricket and other games as well, but in terms of basketball, the game has expanded globally, and the NBA has done its job in terms of expansion around the world. So, if you look at it right now, countries that have produced the most international players in the NBA, Canada is the leader with 57. In terms of European countries, France has produced 40 players. Serbia, which is home of Nikola Jokic and other players such as the Bogdanovich brothers, there is 30 players via Serbia. Australia has also produced 30. Australia and New Zealand, excuse me, and even countries such as Africa, excuse me, even the continent of Africa has expanded and has produced players such as Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, even Giannis Antetokounmpo is originally from Nigeria but had moved over to Greece to play over there. But overall, the game has expanded exponentially, and I do believe we will find more and more players coming from either Africa, Europe, South America, even Asia. Like, it will expand and it will grow. What this means for American players is, in terms of basketball culture, um, I think Steph Curry has changed the mindset of scoring, and I believe it has become more of a selfish game for Americans, right? But this trend could also change because of the meshing with international players. International players seem to have a stronger IQ in terms of today's basketball and in terms of how to really formulate and break down plays the right way. If you were to look at film from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, where the Celtics and even the Lakers with Jerry West and those squads from the 60s and 50s, a lot of that style is produced and implemented in international play. And it is almost recycling back into today's NBA that's mixed in with a lot of also, fast pace and perimeter pace shooting and everything along that comes with that. It's really interesting to see how things will turn out. But as I was iterating, if you were to look at the top players right now, they are all international players, and their game has evolved. Joel Embiid didn't pick up a basketball until the age of like 14, and he has emerged into an unguardable player and the MVP. But he also understands what he needs to do in terms of playing a team oriented game now instead of accolades and achievements, because overall a man of his size and figure could, you know, break down over time, but being smart with his body and how he plays can change things. Nikola Jokic is another example too. He doesn't overdo it. He dishes out. He does the dirty work. He is the total package, even though he looks like a guy that's playing around in his flip flops. Regardless of whatever he looks and how awkward it looks, it flows, it meshes, and it won them a title. And they're honestly, I would consider that team to be the front runner to come out the West again because of Jokic and how he has collectively brought everyone together on that team. So it's interesting to see. Luka Doncic is another superstar. He started off young. You have players like Ricky Rubio that started off when he was 13, playing in pro games. You have a bunch of players, even going back to Hakeem Olajuwon coming from Africa. It's the game has grown exponentially, having Dikembe Mutombo, a lot of players. I couldn't go on and name a bunch of players. Peja Stojakovic with his shooting and other things. It's really incredible to see how basketball is a language through actions. It doesn't matter what country you come from or what territory of the earth that you come from as well. This game has become a language that anyone that understands the game can come in and play. You even have players from America that are going overseas to make a living via European leagues such as the British League, the French League, um, leagues in Germany, Turkey, and Greece as well. Basketball is it's really cool to see how it's grown. It is, and it's also interesting to see how it will grow moving forward in the future. But I think even if, with this international twist to everything, I think the game is in good hands. I do. I do think there will be some American superstars that step up, such as Tyrese Halliburton or even Anthony Edwards. I think players like that have a good print on to today's NBA along with these international players. But in terms of right now, even if you look at the last couple of MVPs, you have Joel Embiid, then you have the two-time MVP winner in Nikola Jokic, and even a two-time MVP winner in Giannis Antetokounmpo. The game has definitely um, moved at the pace of a European style, or not a European style, excuse me, international style of play. And I think that's what showed out in the FIBA World Cup this summer. It's really interesting to see how things will grow with the NBA. But moving forward, you even have a special talent like Victor Wembanyama, a number one pick with intangibles, measurements, and metrics, and having Greg Popovich in his ear. It's going to be incredible to see how he develops and how he takes that step and also becomes a face for the NBA to expand and grow and evolve. And it's going to be very, very, very cool to see how things progress over time with the NBA and all the international players that are playing in the NBA.